It's been a long time.
Sure.
We
Yeah,
met. We met back at a Louis XIV show at the Old Bottom Lounge in Chicago.
oh, the old Bottom Lounge. What was that?
It was like in Wrigleyville. It was underneath some train tracks.
Okay. Yeah.
It was for the first album, the first Louis album.
Yeah. Was it an underground sort of place or?
Sort of, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember it vaguely. I remember that guy Bird. Was it Charlie Bird? That's not Charlie Bird. Some Bird, Andrew Bird, maybe playing at a place.
It sounds vaguely familiar.
I don't know. You know, like I have memories, visual memories of a few places in Chicago, 3 places in Chicago that I remember playing, but I can't tell you what their names are unless you say them. And then I go, oh yeah, that sounds about right. You know, I mean, there's.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I know I saw you guys play at Lollapalooza one of the first years.
We did that a few years. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always loved Lollapalooza. That was great. I actually remember seeing the first Lollapalooza. You know, the when like
the very
Perry.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam, I think played. Yeah. And 9 Inch Nails, I think. And all that.
Yeah, a whole bunch.
But yeah, I miss Chicago. I love Chicago. In a long time. I don't miss the cold though. I remember, you know, like when in the winter months touring in Chicago was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. It was so hard. Everybody else had all the t-shirts, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, you know.
Well, you're originally from San Diego, right?
Yeah, I'm a California dude. So
well, forget about it then. Yeah, of course.
You know, exactly. I can't handle too cold. I mean, you know, I've traveled the world and been in a lot of cold for many years, but it all goes back to when you're a kid, and I just like the sunny weather. That's why I live in Los Angeles now. I like the 5 days of winter we have out here. And that's about it.
It must suck right now to be stuck in Texas when you don't normally get anything, and those people don't even have power. And God,
oh, that's right. I only briefly read that something about how Texas makes the most power out of any state, but yet they're having power shutdowns or whatever outages. I don't know much other than that. Yeah,
they're getting the same temperatures we are, which is bizarre. I couldn't imagine that. It has to be a frightening thing for Texans.
Sure.
All right, well let's just get right into it. I know the new thing you're working on new music for yourself, but I know that you just came out with Netflix just released the documentary on the Hotel Cecil, the Cecil Hotel.
Oh yeah, I didn't do that though. That wasn't mine.
You didn't?
No.
Why did I think you did that?
I don't know, but I saw it. I liked it. But
maybe that's what it was. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I really liked it. I watched it the other night, and what's interesting about that is somebody about a year ago, or maybe over a year ago, I got in a big conversation about this, about the Cecil Hotel, and about the woman being, you know, found in the water tank and whatnot, and we were trying to figure out what hotel it was. We didn't know whoever it was telling me about the story of it, and I was like, is it the Roosevelt? And then I thought back to this person that I know down in Hollywood. Like, we didn't know which one it was, but oddly enough, so as I was watching the thing, there's a bar. I was down at a bar a number of years back with my friend Frank Ainone, who is the executive producer of South Park, you know, the show, and he and I went to like some concert. He loves to go to concerts, and so he would drag me to a bunch of concerts. And we were at something at whatever, I can't think of the name of the arena down there, the big one, whatever, not the Forum, but whatever the big one is in LA. But we were, I think right after the show, we went to this bar that was right next to the Cecil Hotel. And I didn't know anything about the Cecil Hotel. And Frank and I started having this discussion we came up with this whole idea about a TV show. I won't go too into it, but it was like based around this hotel that we were like next to, and it was the Cecil Hotel, you know, like, and we had this whole idea around it. And then when I'm watching it the other day, I'm like, oh my God, that's the hotel we had this big idea about.
Yeah,
it does have a weird power to it, you know, like it really does, this strange thing. But Yeah, crazy documentary. I didn't do it. I do.
Yeah, I must have seen you post something and thought you were promoting it like it was your.
No, I didn't. I don't believe I ever posted anything either. But
I don't know. Maybe then I don't know. Maybe I'm going mad from the snow. I don't know.
I don't know. I do a lot of them though. Like you'd think, I get asked to do most of those like crime docs ever since I started working with Fincher. Ever since I did Mindhunter, they come out of the woodwork. I did The Confession Killer. I have a new one coming out, which is really great. Confession Killer is awesome. Some of my favorite music I've ever done. That came out on Netflix last year. And they're just now recycling through it because lots of people were coming and, like, when it came out, I don't think it got as much attention, which is, it's interesting because, I'm the perfect candidate for it to, like, for them to feed it to, because I watch Mindhunter, obviously, and like, I watch a lot of these crime docs and stuff like that. And when it first came out, I remember seeing one little ad for it and then it disappeared, in my algorithms. And I thought, well, that's really stupid. I'm the perfect candidate for somebody that would watch this. And they're not really plugging it, advertising it hard enough. But it's good to know that, like, then it came in my feed about a week and a half ago again. And then all of a sudden I started getting all these messages from people saying, oh, I saw it. So I think they're giving it another go around, which it should, because that's a really good one, The Confession Killer.
Okay, I'll have to check that. I didn't realize you had done that. So
it's so interesting. The story's fascinating because he is considered the biggest serial killer of all time.
Okay.
But spoiler alert, he wasn't a serial killer. But yet he's admitted to like 400 some odd killings, and it's all about the cops and the corruption of the Texas Rangers, who are so freaking corrupt. It's amazing, and the son of one of the main corrupt dudes is now the head of the Texas Rangers now, and there's it's ridiculous, this story that happened. And it was also a really fascinating story because it was set in like 1982 is when they catch this guy, and he's going on like Good Morning America. Like they have Ted Bundy wasn't interviewed on Good Morning America. This guy's supposed to be the biggest serial killer of all time. And he's literally getting all this attention from like Good Morning America, all these other things. Like, it's nuts. And they have all this great footage on him. It's a really fascinating documentary, but and there's so many twists and turns. You're like, holy shit, how did this happen? That's a really good one. I have a new one coming out called This Is a Robbery. That's a crime doc about, I don't know why I get all these crime docs. I do films too. I'm doing a film for Fincher right now, a short film. Like I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it.
That's fine.
And I did the Fire Festival film for Netflix, although that was a doc film, I guess. But I've done a bunch of films too. But for some reason I get asked to do all these, and I do like doing them because I enjoy watching them.
Yeah.
But This Is a Robbery comes out, I think, in spring. A really fascinating story about a big robbery of all these like Rembrandts and all these, $1 billion worth. I don't know, actually know the value, but $500 million worth of fine art out of this museum in, I want to say Pittsburgh.
Huh.
No, not Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, really great story, really fascinating. Like, it's basically this like, $1 billion place that was like, guarded by like two like music stoner dudes, in the early 80s, sort of like, and there was so much corruption. Whitey Bulger might have been involved.
Oh my God,
might have been involved. All this sort of stuff. It's a really fascinating story, but that comes out in
that's cool.
Yeah.
So that you got that, and you got the secret thing that you can't talk about.
Secret things with Fincher, actually, that I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
And Fincher's my favorite to work with. He's the one that gave me this career in filmmaking, and as a film composer, like without him, I probably wouldn't be doing it. And so whenever he calls to do something, I'm like, yep, let's do it. Righto, doesn't matter. You tell me what you're paying me. I don't care. Fucking, I'll do it. Whatever. Just let me get started. And I get started way before I see picture, and I'm always excited to do it because he is such a brilliant filmmaker and such a sculptor that things are just so good, and the workflow is always so incredible, and he's so positive, and he just lets me do my thing. It's great. He'll have ideas about things here and there, but he seems to trust me to rise to the occasion, which he does to, I think, a number of people that his collaborators on, from his editor Kirk Baxter to people that he trusts. He allows them to have a little bit of rope to hang themselves with.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, and you're in good company because he works with Trent and
Atkins,
those guys.
They're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. Yeah. I love their work, and their work that they've done with Fincher has been great. So yeah, that was when I first came into it. He hired me for Gone Girl to do the teaser, like trailer, theatrical trailers, and those were always a big deal with him. So it was a really great thing, and we hit it off. I did this song "She" by Charles Aznavour I had Richard Butler sing it from the Psychedelic Furs. So that was Fincher's idea to do that, but Richard did an incredible job, and he wanted this real dark version of the song, and I think I nailed it out of the park, and we really hit it off, and then it was sort of like, then he hired me to do this HBO show that didn't come out called Video Secrecy, but we worked on it for about 8 months, which is interesting. It's like even a big time dude like that, like some things don't happen sometimes,
right.
You realize it happens for Scorsese, for Ryan Murphy, for this person that still HBO and places like that will sometimes stop things, even if they're good. But we just hit it. And then he hired for Mindhunter and blah blah blah. And now 8 years later, whatever, I'm still working on stuff with him, and it's been great. But I knew instantly, like, if I was going to do this, I couldn't sound anything like Trent Reznor and Atticus, because then it would just be like Bud Light or something. It would be like the equivalent of that in music. I would be doing Trent Light, Trent Atticus Light. And I knew, for me, I always have to find my own way with everything and figure out how to do it in my own way and be original and unique and stuff. So that's what I set out to do. Anything that was even remotely reminiscent of Trent and Atticus, I had to not do. The one thing I do remember, though, noticing from their film scores that I really enjoy is they have a boiling aspect to them. There's all this boiling underneath of stuff.
Yeah. And
that was the one little, probably really the only thing I sort of took away from them. Maybe there's other things that I don't recognize, like internally or externally, but but I loved that boiling. That was an interesting. I don't know how much I did that, but I would do that sometimes. But I always loved that on their stuff.
Yeah,
this cavernous boil underneath this stuff on the top, And
yeah, well, a lot of that stuff too. It reminds me. I know obviously they were, and maybe you were too, heavily inspired by like the Prague or I guess electronic scores of the 80s and stuff like that. That's where a lot of that kind of stuff comes from, Well,
I love, one of my favorites of all time is Vangelis, that I just freaking love.
Yeah.
I love, when I was a little kid, I loved him. And yeah, he had these glorious scores, obviously the most famous is like Blade Runner,
right,
and Chariots of Fire, but his radical stuff, my favorite stuff of his was The Bounty. It's a movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins and Gibson, I know for sure were in it.
Yeah, and then Daniel Day-Lewis. And it as a little kid, like a little kid, I loved this fucking movie. And I think it was because the music, I'd even taped it like on VHS, as a little, I don't know, 8-year-old kid or something. And I was so in love with it. And what's funny about it too, is there was another movie I was so in love with too, that is these are both really hardcore dramas. So a little kid shouldn't be into these things,
no.
Granted, you got to see Tahitian women and their boobs and stuff like that, which of course I loved as a little kid. And so maybe there was probably a little bit of that in there, but, there was a movie called Missing with Jack Lemmon. That's a really, really sad story with Sissy Spacek.
Yeah.
Did you ever see it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I saw it. It's one of those movies I saw on cable when I was a kid, but I haven't seen it as an adult. I really want to watch it again.
Well, it's super dark. It's super depressing. It's a true story about this journalist in 1972, early 70s, that's down in Chile when there's the big coup that happens. And they basically he disappears, and he's ultimately determined to have been murdered and by the government, by Pinochet, whatever, and you know, Jack Lemmon goes down to find him, and Sissy Spacek was his girlfriend or wife or something, and it's a really depressing movie, but there's a theme to it that I freaking love so much. You know, it's these gorgeous, like, Greek theme, like robust, bold, like romantic in a way, like themes that he would do, you know, that I just loved it. I love the sound of it. And it wasn't until about maybe 10 years ago, something like that, that I was getting really into Blade Runner. And I remember, you know, so I was like listening to Blade Runner, but I hadn't really looked at the other stuff that this guy had done. And anyway, what really cinched it, I was in a hotel room somewhere. I turn on the TV. I don't know what I was doing, if I was still on tour or something like that, but I turn on the TV and I like turn around, and it's the closing credits for Missing. And it has the main theme on it. And instantly I was like, holy shit, that's got to be Vangelis. And then I remembered as a kid loving this movie, like, or this music. And then it clicked for me, and I was like, and he probably did The Bounty. And so I instantly go and try to find it. And it was like, he did all these things, you know, and it was like, oh, it was like my mind exploded. It was like, oh my God, this sort of stuff is so ingrained in me from being a little kid. Like, those are the only two movies I really remember as a kid, you know, like, and being so into them, and it being so out of character for like a little kid to be into these crazy heavy dramas, but it was the music, you know. Those were Prague, you know, but like those were these great electronic soundscapes, you know, but with a really tuned in sense of melody. Unlike, like, if you listen to the new Blade Runner, for instance, which whoever did that, I think Hans Zimmer and some other guys.
It was Hans. It was originally going to be Villeneuve's regular guy had died.
Yeah, I thought it was Johan Johansson was going to do it. No,
right, but I think he died.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he had started working on it, and then he passed, and well, they were like, okay, we got to have somebody do it. So yeah, I don't like it as much as the original.
Oh no, because it's.
I do like it.
There's no fucking melody in it. Like, and Johan is great. I love Johan's work. I'm a real big fan of his stuff, and that's a real shame. I feel a real kinship with him, and it's a real shame that he passed, because I think we were very similar people, and we had a lot of similar tastes, and I love his work. That's a real shame.
Yeah,
he'd be on top of the world right now. But I actually liked the new Blade Runner, and I could appreciate what they were doing, but what they missed was they had all the fluff, all of the sonic texture reasonably of the original one. Way overblown, too many things, which happens, too many people do it. If you're a musician, you could always stack on another sound, another melody, another thing, blah, blah, blah. You can do it, and usually you do that when something's not right. You know, like Vangelis didn't stack on everything under the sun. He didn't need to, because his melodies were so radical. Like, and they were so tasteful and so touch. Whereas in the new Blade Runner, it was just all smoke and mirrors without any of the melody, without any of that, like, robust, radical Greekness, you know, that whatever it is that Vangelis, like, is in him, this sort of wine drinking fucking genius dude, like that was missing from the new one, you know, all of the radical things that you could actually hang your hat on and to get into. And I'm a fan of melody, you know. That's one thing that's often missing in so many scores nowadays, is there's so much of a focus on the soundscape, which I do too. I love the soundscapes. Like, to me, it's all about the sounds, but you also still want to have melody in there, you know. And that's often, you'll find somebody that does melody but not a really great sound. It's like the sound is always the same sort of, you know, ununique, you know, stuff, film score-y sound, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it, where you'll have people that are just soundscapes without any melody. And for me, I like to combine the two.
Yeah. Well, there was something about Vangelis's score for Blade Runner. It was capturing the the kind of spirit of the detective movies from like the past, the jazz kind of feeling, the jazz.
Oh, yeah, Blade Runner Blues. That's a really rad track. But yeah, I mean, that whole thing is great. Memories of Green. There's beauty, and I love sax too. And they use the sax, and yeah, it's great, man. It's great. I recommend it. As a matter of fact, I have an intern around here. He's 18, and I was, you forget, like I forget all of that I've learned over time, and that him being 18 is a really great kid, but he doesn't know shit about music. He doesn't. And I was actually turning him on to Vangelis last night. I was playing him The Bounty and a couple Blade Runner tracks. I'm always like, so now I'm like trying to feed him here, listen to Roddy Wood. I got my own album to do, listen to this film score, listen to this thing, trying to just teach him, because he takes for granted, like these guys don't have the same sort of stuff, and I would seek it out as a kid, I would go, I hung out at that record store constantly. I'd steal records. The guys that were there knew I was doing it. Like I'd go to the dollar bin and I'd take 10 records and I would like interchange, the ones that were in $14, that would be good with the dollar bin one and all that sort of shit. And guys were my friends. Like that was my education, was like, who played on this record? Oh, Leon Russell's on this record. Oh, wow. Or like, I like the way this guy's like hat is. Oh, shoot, that's Carl Radel. He played with Leon, and he also played with Eric Clapton. Oh, okay, cool. And who's Denny Cordell that produced this Joe Cocker record? Oh, I got to check out his stuff. Like all that stuff. That's how it was my education, would be like little things. And you could go for $10, you could get, something, and half of those records would be junk, but a couple of them would be gems and stuff like that. And people can do that now with Spotify and all that, and that's wonderful. You can I've searched out and discovered lots of really great music with things like Spotify and stuff,
Yeah.
But not everything's up there.
No.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. Speaking of things not being up there, I got to say, I've never heard more than a couple of tracks of Convoy.
Oh yeah, you know what, man? I think about that all the time. I talk about that like this year. I'm going to put it out because it's great. There's the first record we did is phenomenal. We made 2 records as Convoy and like a tape, a cassette tape. That was like in 1997. We made this rad cassette tape as like kids, and it's awesome, and it needs to be out there. It's really good. Then we signed a record deal, and then made a record called Black Licorice. The reason why it's not up there, I think, is because that record label went under. So and that was all pre-Spotify. So, but I have it. I mean to put it out this year, so I will do that because the original Convoy record is so great, and we did it on 8 tracks. We were learning how to sing. We were all living together up in the mountains in a place called Homul, California. We lived in 2 places. One was this like adobe like castle type thing that was like huge 40-foot ceilings that this artist like couple had made. It was way out in the boonies. It was like an hour from downtown San Diego. We lived there, and we lived on this 46-acre ranch in what was like the grandmother's house next to this abandoned sort of like Playboy mansion house that was like rat infested. But it was like on this rad property, and we had it to ourselves. And I built a studio in the garage with all this wood because he was an old contractor, so he had all this like old wood on the property. And we built that, probably to the dismay of the owner of the building. But I think they were planning on tearing it down. Apparently it hasn't even sold. It's been all these years later. But anyway, radical property. And we stayed there. We learned how to record, and we learned how to like, just do stuff. It was a type of place that would snow every once in a while, and that far out of San Diego.
Really? Wow.
But it was great, and we learned how to do it. There's some bad notes and this and that, but it's really great. Little 8-track, reel to reel. And that got us a record deal. And then, like happens, I basically produced that record, and I've produced every record other than this next one that I've ever done. With Convoys, we signed this record deal, and nice guys that we signed it with, but we wanted to redo new music. You know, the one thing I've learned over time, and the A&R guy at the time, this guy named Joe Augustine, a great guy. He's later in life, he apologized for this, but he basically, they wanted us to re-record that record, but now with like a big time producer. But this was like a couple years later, we were on to the new tracks. Like, to me, it's like painting a picture you've already done. You become your own cover band of your own music. It's like, that was a huge lesson to me, never to ever do that. And I hated working with the producer. We just butted heads. He was a really sweet guy named David Bianco, but he was a good engineer, but we just didn't click creatively. He was middle of the road, and for me, he was middle of the road. And he did like Wild Flowers with Petty. Like, he was an engineer. He was known for being a really great engineer.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, Jesse Mallon, worked with him a bit, and I know he kind of talked highly of him. But not everybody, not every band is going to connect with a producer. So
no, exactly. And the truth is, like, I was probably a bit of a pain in the ass too, because I was really protective of our stuff. And this was like his, this was his, just a paycheck to him, but for me, this was my fucking life, this was, and I didn't, and he was always trying to like get little songwriting ideas on there. And it was like, dude, just stop. We're not fucking changing this song. We wrote it. Right. But nice guy. But I was never really happy with that record. I was happy with some of the tracks on there a lot. And ultimately it's what broke up the band, and then started Louis XIV. Matter of fact, we owed them like, if we would have given them a record, they would have given us a bunch of money, and we were broke at the time. But luckily, I didn't take that money. I could have, but I wanted to not do that project. Right. I wanted to do not that. I wanted to start something new, and so I'm glad I did. Which is remarkable to me, because I could have easily just given them a record, and they would have given a bunch of money, and I would have at least been able to live for a year. But I decided to just be broke, But I wanted to do, and then Louis XIV took off about a year later. So, but the Convoy stuff. So I mean to put it up. I need to, because the first
the rights reverted back to you.
Yeah, I mean, that thing's defunct. Go fuck themselves. That's the way I say. If they want to, if they want to come after me for putting it out, but they were nice guys. I don't mean that. I don't mean
what label was it?
They were nice guys. They were called Metropolitan Hybrid. Hybrid was the label, and it was like a subsidiary of Atlantic, kind of. But they were all really nice guys. So I don't think they'll trouble it, because truthfully, I'm going to put it out on Spotify and make 15 cents. Like right. Spotify doesn't make artists any money. That's the drag about it. Like, you could have 20 million plays and you might make $1,000. It's like, and probably not even that. And the government takes half of that, and blah blah blah. So like the thing that's great about Spotify and things like that, all of those, Apple Music, it's like you can discover a lot of stuff, and it's been great for artists from like the 60s and 70s that got passed over. Like, suddenly they might get a resurgence, but truthfully, it's not like they're making a lot of money, and that's the drag about art. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I make music for myself. Like, I'm working my solo record. It's not to make money. It's not to do anything. It's because that's what I have to do. That's when I don't know any other way. Since I was a little kid, this is all I've ever done. I've never, I've had a couple of like real jobs, like delivering pizzas and shit when I was 16 and 18. But other than that, I played music. I've been lucky enough to like walk into a studio and make music all day long. But getting into film, I can actually make money, and I love it. And so like I do the film stuff to make money, but I also really love it, especially when I get to work with like Fincher and just great directors. And I'm really happy with the stuff I'm doing and given the freedom, which I usually always am, to do what I want. So I have a blast. But I don't count like music, or like even producing other bands or my friends and all that sort of stuff, or, big bands. It's like, I don't look at that like, oh, this is my big payday. None of it. Like, music is fucked as far as the business is, as far as artists.
Right.
It's really not. And even film, they try to like grab ownership of everything, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. You realize corporate America is like trying to take all the money from starving artists, essentially. I mean, and America's so fucked too, because like America's the only places that they don't. It's not illegal to take an artist's writer share. Writer share is like 25% of the publishing, essentially.
Yeah.
Other countries, like in Europe, it's illegal to take that away from the writer, which is like, thank you, Europe, you fucking awesome people. So in America, though, like they'll all of the companies from HBO to Showtime to Netflix, they'll try to come after your writers. When I first started into it, I was like, okay, I guess I have to. And then it was like, fuck you. But they'll lie to you and they'll say, oh no, we take all the writers. It's like, no, you don't. Fuck you. You don't. You're not with me. That didn't get somebody else to do it, because it's the little bit of like. It's the little bit of like residual money that will come down like 20 years from now. Whereas like guys like me, we don't have like pensions, we don't have normal jobs,
right?
Like we just don't have that sort of stuff. We don't get like health care, or any of that kind of stuff that everybody's always complaining about, and 401ks and what all this sort of shit. I don't even know what. But it's sort of like, I don't even know what that is, man. Like I've never had that. I've never, through my whole life, it's sort of been like feast or famine,
Yeah.
But things are great now. I can't complain whatsoever. So.
Well, I mean, it is interesting that, you started off, when you were young, you had the idea of being in a band, and you did a couple of different bands. You did the Vicki Cryer thing. You were with the Dolls for a bit. And the thing that kind of starts becoming a source of income is, or steady-ish, is film scoring. I mean, that had to kind of surprise you.
Well, it was great. The thing that I really dug is because I got sick of being on the road, Like I loved touring for a while, and it's the dream. Like I was toured in a tour bus and flights, and you're flying all around the world. I got to go to Japan and Europe a million times over and all this sort of stuff. I loved it. We played in big arenas. We played festivals to 100,000 people. I lived the dream. And there was a moment when I was with the Killers. We were playing with the Killers, Louis XIV, in 2012, I think. And we were playing O2 Arena in London. And it was like packed. And I remember doing this one, like holding my arms up, and the crowd's going nuts. And I remember thinking, you know what, man, enjoy this moment, because you should be enjoying it a lot more than you are. And maybe it's time to go do something else, even though like you're living the dream. But I'm smart enough to know myself enough that I got to always keep changing and evolving. If I get static, I'll get bored, and I am somebody that likes to create every day something. Whatever the fuck I'm creating, whatever stupid idea I'm getting into, I'm into it 100%, and I love it. And I missed that from touring. Touring, you play the same songs overnight. Like I would change up my guitar solos, and every single night, I never played the same one twice. That was my little bit of fun every night. It was like just making sure things were different, and we go off on jams and we do all this sort of stuff. That was a bit of fun, but other than that, you're not really creating stuff. And I would bring all sorts of recording gear on the tour buses and stuff and set up. But it's you're limited to stuff. But I remember being up there, crowds going nuts, thinking, okay, man, let's go back. When you get back off this tour, let's figure out what you're going to do next. And that was when I said, okay, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. So maybe that tour, 2011. I don't know. Anyway, but I don't know. But
this was after the second Louis album.
This was the second Louis album, came out in was technically the third, because we released one on our own.
Okay.
And released 2 EPs in the middle of it. Like Slick Dogs and Ponies was the last record.
Right.
Album. That was 2008 into 2008, I think. Something like that. But so this was sort of like the end, like a tour far off from that, but like. But still, we were still on tour. We were touring so much, but I realized I wanted, I'd always before Louis ever started, I was like a record producer. I always saw myself as somebody that wanted to produce records. And I was for other bands. Like I did this band called The Virgins and got them a big record deal with Atlantic. Wrote a song called Rich Girls.
Yeah.
And then worked with all sorts of different people, worked with the Killers on stuff, and I demo out a lot of their songs, for Sam's Town, and sang on those things and stuff in the back of my tour bus and all that. But so like I always wanted to do it. So but I had gotten to this point where, so I moved up to Los Angeles and I was doing that and I was producing a lot of things, which I love to do because my tastes are very eclectic. I like everything if it's good, you know.
Yeah.
I don't tend to like a lot of pop music, especially modern pop music, but like, I can appreciate rad shit if it's rad shit. Like I can totally get it. It's just some of the production values that I don't like about other stuff. But like, but anyway, but I'd gotten sort of disillusioned. I was getting sick of it, you know. Like, I just same thing. I started getting bored of it, you know, of the sort of just producing and stuff for a minute, and that's when Fincher called me up. And they didn't say no to anything. It was like, I want to go work at Phil. I was living in Laurel Canyon. I had my studio in my place, but I was like, I want to go work at Studio 3, where they did, you know, most of Pet Sounds and Phil Spector's big room at what's now East West, but what used to be United Recorders. It was one of my favorite rooms to work at. And I was like, I'm going to go there for a month and work on this track. Okay, great. I want a choir. Okay, great. I want an orchestra. Okay, great. Like, it was like nobody said no at all. And I thought, fucking A, this is what I want to do. You know, like, okay, I'm in. Like, okay, great. You know, like, whatever I want to do, they gave me carte blanche. It is obviously because I was working with Fincher, you know.
Yeah.
But so like he has tremendous freedom because he's such a great filmmaker, and he gave me such tremendous freedom and never once asked any questions about any of that sort of stuff. Nobody did, and so I thought, okay, this is great. And that was what I said to Fincher. I was like, hey, do you or any of your buddies, you know, have like an HBO show or something like that, or know of anything I would love to do it? And Fincher's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I got this one. I was going to ask you to do it anyway, so boom, boom, you know. And then that started my career, and I loved it. But I think I have a different thing than a lot of other guys too, because I know I have friends that are film composers, and there's a lot of horror stories from them.
Yeah.
Like, Fincher's smart enough; he never temps out my music. Like, he never uses other people's music to temp, what that's called, like temp score, which most directors will, unless they hire me and I sit there and scream, kick and scream, say, don't fucking do it. If you want me to do it, don't put any temp music in, because you ruin if I hear a piano in there, like you temped in a piano, I can't not hear a piano. And that ruins the original thought process. I like blank canvas. I want it to come to me and be totally my invention, you know.
That makes sense.
You know, but most places people won't do that, and their main thing is like these, you know, people temp it in, they fall in love with it, and then these guys chase temp. I've luckily never really had to do that. There's been people that have asked me to do it, and I just don't. You know, and some things I just had to get off of because I'm just like, I'm not going to chase temp. I'm not going to copy Reznor, or I'm not going to copy this or that. I'm not going to copy anyone. You know, like so get that out of your head. Hire somebody else. Hire a copycat. But like, but it's you know, Fincher was smart enough to like hire me way before I even saw pictures. So I was building up my own library of what I thought the show could sound like, and then I see picture, and then it inspires me, and I start writing differently too, and whatever. But it all becomes a tapestry for the shows, and I just loved it. I loved, you know, the freedom of it. I loved the ability to not have to have a format, you know. In songwriting, it's sort of like verse, chorus, you know, or verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. You know, like there's something that's really fun to write into that framework, but it's really great to not and to just explore texturally. And I fell in love with it because I love to play the studio like it's an instrument, you know, like this. It's an organism that from ever since I was a little kid with a 4-track tape cassette, I realized the magic of recording, you know, and that has permeated my whole life, you know. And so I love to play the thing and to just get far out, you know, and see where I can go and inspire. And so that was when I found filmmaking, it was like, oh yeah, man, I can. And it was sort of like, and I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning too, and so I was able to completely find my own way, you know, completely find my own voice, and not have to copy anybody, not emulate anybody, you know. And so, I think that's true. If you listen to my scores, they don't sound like anybody else. Granted, I hear now all the time people like copying me, but you know, I got up to the place first, you know, like And I consider when people copy me, like pretty much you hear it. If you watch any sort of crime thing, you'll hear me my shit being copied. Right. But it's flattery, you know. I got to move. I got to always move. I look at it as like flattery, and that means I just got to move to new places. I try never to, copy myself or repeat myself. So it keeps you on your toes when people.
Well, yeah, because then you're gonna get in the thing where people are like, well, I've seen Mindhunter and that guy's name was on, but I also heard all these other people, so they don't know. They're not gonna sit there and look up who was first.
Sure.
Say, this thing sounds like a ripoff of that, and
totally.
you always got once you start doing that, you have to move on to something else just for keep people guessing.
Yeah, and I'm an artist. I don't want to paint the same painting twice, and that's what it is. It's sort of like I don't want to paint it, and to me, I don't want to remake the same fucking thing over and over again. People will ask you to. They'll temp in sometimes your music from other things, and that's always the hardest to do. It's sort of like, stop doing that because I don't want to copy. I don't want to copy that, and I wouldn't do it to Fincher by copying Mindhunter vibes on some other show, or I consider that kind of wrong. Other people do it all over the place. Some people are known for their sound, and they do that same sound on everything, and it works for them. But I definitely have a sound in a way, but I consider it constantly evolving and changing.
Well, it's probably also because you came from a different perspective.
Totally.
I mean, you started in rock, essentially, and you just kind of moved into it. I have to guess that aborted HBO show not actually going through was somehow perfect as a trying out period, because and you were able to experiment and also not have to work on it again because you were able to get your feet wet, essentially.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there was aspects of it. The drag it was such great music. That it was basically set in 1983 in Hollywood. And so I told myself, I like to put rules and things on myself, little limitations, because I think as an artist, it can be really good, to put yourself in a box sometimes. Right. I did it with Louis XIV. Louis XIV initially it's going to be only 4 things at once we'll ever hear. That was sort of maybe if I bring in another instrument like strings or something, well, then I'm going to drop out something else. There was it was very much getting back to raw. And with this show, Videosyncrasy is what it was called. It was set in 1983. So I told myself I'm only going to use equipment from 1984 and before to record this music. Only that kind of instruments, this and that. And I got into checking out how Trevor Horn made, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and the Fix records and Let's Dance by Bowie. And I was sort of becoming slightly a student of how they made those records and early sampling, which in all of my years before this, I had never used samplers. So or once I think I did, but it was I wasn't fluent in sampling and that sort of early 80s MIDI technology and stuff. So it informed what I would later on do a lot in film scoring, which is I don't use sound libraries. I'll make all of my own sounds if I bring them into a sampler and replay them on a piano, and on whatever keyboard. But that was the genesis of, I could record my invention, because I invent instruments and stuff too. I can record my instrument doing this sort of thing, or playing, and then I can bring it into a sampler and play that too, as well as playing it live. But it was I could do all these. It opened up all of these doors, and I got to learn how to do stuff. And then Mindhunter was just really, that was the thing we started doing after that. But it was after 8 months, it was sort of this was also a lesson in the filmmaking. It's sort of oddly enough, the day that it was canceled, I was with my girlfriend at the time. We'd gone to yoga. She dragged me to yoga. And we went to this restaurant, this Mexican restaurant in in off the Sunset in Hollywood, Silver Lake area, and we're the only ones there, and it's about noon or something like that. And we're having lunch, and in walks Fincher. Only time in my life I've ever seen the man like out and about, right? And in walks like what the fuck? And we're the only ones there. And he was Trish. That was the Trish was it? Yes, that was the costume designer. Really great person. But they came in, and he basically said, "Yeah, HBO, pulled out."
Yeah.
And it was like, and I hadn't been drinking for like a year. And then it was like, I guess I'll have a margarita. Let's have a margarita. I started drinking again. So damn you, HBO, you made me start drinking again. But it was funny. It was sort of like so weird that I would see him, and it was like he had just gotten the call. It was just something straight out. It was just weird. Yeah. And, but I was everybody from the crew and everybody I would talk to was sort of like they just moved on to the next thing. And I'm like, wait, I have all this fucking music. I have like a library of amazing music. What do you mean? Hold on, wait. So I actually took the episodes, re-edited them. I tried to save it. I brought over a writer that was a friend of mine the girlfriend that was on American Horror Story, and we started like spitballing how to rewrite the show. I mean, the naive, like I was so naive. Yeah. And Fincher was such a good sport that like he came up to my place like 2 weeks later, and I re-scored the episodes, re-edited them in Pro Tools, which is like audio software. But I did this sort of mock editing. I sort of like wrote out a character, took out a character completely. I like redid like all this stuff, just trying to save this thing. And I mean. Fincher's so great. I mean, here he is, one of the best filmmakers ever. Yeah. And he's there for an hour and sees my edit, and I have 3 pages of notes of like, here's how I think we should fix this. Who the fuck am I, right? Who am I? I don't like. I mean, like the audacity. I honestly think Fincher admired it because like, who is this fucking guy? Like, because I cared. I was
right. He could tell you weren't like thinking, oh, I can do Fincher better than Fincher.
No, yeah, I obviously
purely love thing.
But there is the producer in me that has worked with some big ass great artists and stuff. So like, there's the producer in me and the guy. If people hire me, I will say my opinion. Yeah. Or if they don't hire my friends, everybody comes to me for advice often because they know I'll say it like it is. I can be a cheerleader too, but I'm also like, I'm trying to help always. I mean it from a good place. And it's just, I can't hold my tongue, or I can't, I have to try. I might be wrong sometimes, but the audacity of me trying is really funny. In hindsight, I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. But what a great sport he was to not say fuck this kid. And he, then he hired me for Mindhunter, and Mindhunter was so great to do because I loved the material. I loved being able to go dark. I just naturally like going dark, and I'm drawn to the darkness in our personalities. I obviously have a dark side. So there's like I can go there. And melodically, I wanted to go melodically. I liked the idea with Mindhunter. I liked living in this place of intangibility because so much of Mindhunter was about thought. It was about the thought process. It wasn't technically about killings. Like it was about serial killers, but it was really about the mind of a serial killer and stuff. Right. So it was all this intangible thing, like which thoughts are. And so the score had to live in that mist, like that you couldn't touch it. It floats. And so, and I love that. And the thing about I love about working with Fincher too is like, I realized after a while, like if he can tell what instrument it is, he's not really going to like it. It needs to be out of this world. And that lends it a great place for me because I like things, like I get really bored with guitars. I'm a guitar player. I'm a great fucking guitar player. It's but like it's the last thing I'll often reach for because I'm just bored of it sometimes. I'll reach for like something that I can make out of this world. I have to tweak it enough that it doesn't sound normal. And I like that about him. I still love that about him. Where if it sounds like a piano, well, he's not going to like it. Which is great. Yeah. It's like You need something that, and I love that same feeling. I get bored with normality, you know, and so like, anyway, but with filmmaking, it was like, oh, this is great. I love this. Lots of talented people, and it was something I hadn't done before. You know, that was really the fun part. Is like I had to find my own way, you know, and I can be original. Nobody, you know, and luckily some guys though I know can't because they are at the mercy of all these people and whatever gigs they get, and it's hard to get gigs and this and that. And I was kind of, you know, it just kind of happened for me, you know, and I just stumbled on it. And then I knocked it out of the park. You have to, like, you know, that's opportunity. You have to knock it out of the park when you get the chance. And you have to also recognize opportunity when it comes in front of you. A lot of people don't recognize it.
Right. Well, and you definitely put your time in, too, over the years. I mean, you know, and you're talking about that HBO show that you and Fincher were working on. I know he had two at the time that he was working on. Everybody wanted to desperately see both of those get on the air.
Both for HBO. Both for HBO that got
right, and that was a big bummer when neither one worked out.
Yeah, what was the other one called?
I can't remember.
Now they actually released it, but not with Fincher. Wasn't involved at this point.
Oh.
One word. It was an English big hit in England, and they released it through Amazon. Like somebody else did it. Like Fincher dropped out.
Did what's her name that wrote Gone Girl? Did she?
Yeah, Gillian Flynn. She was writing Fincher too. So I think. Hold on, I'm just going to grab one coffee. One second.
Yeah, no problem.
And she was writing it for Fincher too, but I won't go into the details because. But I know what happened with that one. And you know, let's just say you just can't fuck with Fincher, man. He'll just say fuck you, and I like that about him. Personally, because I'm that same way. Like it's, you know, I am. So, you know, like I have no problem saying no. You know, I don't mind it at all. Matter of fact, I've told somebody just the other day, like they wanted me to do their film, and they attempted all this music and stuff, and I was like, man, you don't want me. I'm gonna do something different, and you're married to this shit. You should just license that music. So I don't want to do it, you know, and I need the money too, you know, like, but it was like, I gotta stay true to what I do. I don't do it. I don't do any of this stuff for money. I you know, I will, and I like money and I like to make, you know, all that stuff, but that's not why, like, I gotta do it from the artistic place first and foremost. And then all the stuff like money and things like that will come, you know, like, but I got to do it from the right place. But I don't mind saying no at all, and yeah, Fincher's good about that too. Like you just can't fuck with him. Don't toy with him because he'll just wouldn't walk.
Well, I mean, God, you think about all the stuff that he ended up saying. You know, just walking away from. I mean, one of the biggest was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with Brad.
Yeah, I don't know what the story behind that one. I don't.
Well, it was just too expensive. They kept wanting to whittle the budget. The studio wanted to whittle the budget down, and he was like, "I can't make it for anything less than X." You know.
I mean, and that's essentially what happens, and that's similar to all these other things too. It's sort of like that's the way he does. He likes to put the money into the film making too.
Right.
Like how they say it, put the money into the screen. You know, and he does, like, you know, like he sculpts and he works constantly. Like he's always got a few things brewing around, you know, and he's working constantly. Like he's an artist, you know, so he's constantly doing stuff. And if he tells you it's going to cost $100 million, and then you come back and go, oh, you know, whatever, we'll give you 90. Right. I told you it was going to cost $100 million. Take it or leave it. And then go, wow, that's 95. All right, no, I'm not going to do it. Like that's like if he's that way, you know, and he's smart enough, like, you know.
Well, there was a lot of back and forth with that one for a while. That one was up and down, and so was him doing the sequel to World War Z. I remember.
Yeah, I know exactly. That was, and that's I know, and yeah, that was around when I've been around, which is really funny too because I was in there for a meeting for probably was Mindhunter, season 1 or something, and we were doing something down in his offices on Sunset or in Hollywood Boulevard or whatever, wherever it is, and they were talking about World War Z. I hadn't seen the first one, but I remember saying to like Cian, his wife and producer and stuff, I remember saying, "Oh God, like the world needs another fucking zombie movie." You know, like, and you know, not knowing that he was about, like, they're talking about doing this film, you know. I remember when I finally realized what I had done, I'd gone, oh, man, what am I doing? I might have just got myself out of a gig, you know. But,
all you did was endure him to you more.
Yeah, exactly, probably.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, exactly. He was going to do that, and then I think it was, I don't know what exactly happened with that. I think it was it could have been a creative thing. It could have been a financial thing.
You know, I mean, the first one made money, but it didn't make crazy enough money, I think, to spend.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's one of those movies where if you do a sequel, like, it's iffy, you're going to get the same level of success despite the talent in it, you know?
I mean, Fincher would have done a rad job.
Well, we've taken up a lot of time, but there's a couple of things I want to still get to. And
go ahead.
One of the things I want to ask about is, I remember I was a huge, I mean, I'm still a huge fan, but I was a huge Louis fan.
Oh, cool.
Huge Louis. I mean, I was just obsessed with that, with the Best Little Secrets, or Kept album.
I love that record. It's still one of my favorites.
I listened to it last week again, and it's still so fucking awesome. And I remember my son, who was young at the time, was really into it too.
Oh,
and I was just talking to him last night. He's 30 now, for Christ's sake.
Oh, wow.
I was telling him I was going to interview you, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool. I still love that album."
Yeah.
But you guys got really slammed by the music media for being quote unquote sexist, which I never fully understood.
Great. Some of that was really great. I remember it was actually.
Hello?
We got we also.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
You don't hear me? I'm here. You don't hear me?
Did I do something?
I think you did something because I hear you. You want to call me back?
Fuck.
I hear you.
Hold on. Oh.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, you do. What'd you do? Press mute accidentally or something?
I accidentally pulled the cord out a little bit.
Oh, got it.
I'm sorry. So anyways, we were saying that the music press labeled you guys as being sexist at the time.
Yeah, and misogynistic, which is really funny because at the time, I didn't know what that word even meant. I had to look it up. I was like, because I'm kind of a mama's boy. Like, if you actually really knew me, like I love my mother so much. You know, like she's everything to me. So like this idea that we were this like sexist thing, it was really funny. There was so much that went around all that was so hypocritical and really funny that I could tell you about, which was like, well, like first off, there was some really great stuff. Like it was twofold about it. Like when we first released Illegal Tender, which was the like EP right before Best Little Secrets Are Kept, it came out in January. Right. The Best Little Secrets Are Kept came out in March, and they shared some of the same songs. It was like there's like 3 of the same songs on both. And the reason why they wanted to do that, the record company, was because we had like been one of these bands that got on radio. Like we were number 1 on K-Rock and on pirate radio here in LA, in San Diego, in San Francisco on Live 105, and like a couple other places, at least 7 markets without a record deal. We didn't have a record out. It was like it was literally just like we were our own record label, and we were suddenly just like out of like the sort of stuff that happened in the 70s, and it didn't happen anymore. We had suddenly gotten radio all over the place. People were eating up, Finding Out True Love Is Blind. And so by the time we actually were releasing the record with that song on it, it was like a year and a half later, or like a year, at least a year or something like that. So they were rushing just to get something out because it was like, it was out, but nobody, like it was number 1 on all these radio stations, but you couldn't get it.
Right.
And to me, Finding Out True Love Is Blind was just my version of California Girls by, or our version of California Girls by like the Beach Boys. Like, the East Coast girls are hip. I really dig those. Yeah. Just like rifling off all the girls, and later people would go, oh, or it's like Some Girls or something. But I hadn't thought of Some Girls at the time. It was more Beach Boys was like, and it wasn't like I set out to write that, but I think when I was writing that, like the most sexualized songs on that record all happened in a 3-day period. Pledge of Allegiance, Paper Doll, and Finding Out True Love Is Blind. And they were all, for the most part, written like in a matter of like 20 minutes each. Paper Doll was ad-libbed completely. Like all that whole like vocal was literally me ad-libbing, one take, there it is, that's a fucking song. You know, like it was like completely, and it was like 3 nights in a row, or 4 nights, I think, but 3 nights that I worked on stuff, and all that magic came out. And it just so happened that they were sort of playful. I was trying to make my girlfriend at the time sort of like smile, you know, like just thought she might like get a kick. You know, I was just trying to like turn.
Well, there's a thing going back to it about like during the glam years and rock in general. Like there was this cocksure, you know, this attitude, and it was suddenly like the idea that wanting to have sex wasn't right, or talking about wanting to have sex, but it was also becoming the most open generation sexually at the same time. So I was like, I never understood the dichotomy between, like, they just thought it was objectifying. I couldn't even imagine if you guys.
Well, you know, the greatest thing, like, it was actually really good for us in a lot of ways. But like, so like, Illegal Tender came out, and I realized the hypocrisy of stuff. Illegal Tender came out, and it was on my record label, mine and Brian's, who's in the band, Pineapple Group, and Vice Records. So Vice put it out.
Yeah.
But it was technically all through Atlantic. Atlantic was still sort of like, we'd signed to them, and they sort of allowed for it to be released through Vice and this and that. And we got like 9 out of 10 stars on it for Illegal Tender. And then the record comes out, and it's on Atlantic. And then we got a little bit of backlash because we're on this massive, you know, label, and we had signed a big record deal too at the time. You know, like there was like, we had a ton of labels interested in us, and so we got a big, you know, a lot of money and all this whole thing. And there was this misconception too, which was so funny to me, because I produced the records, I mixed the records, I recorded them. Half the time it'd be just me, but it was the band. We did everything. Like all the artwork was us. Everything was 100% controlled by us. I made it sure in our deal with Atlantic was like, you give us money, I give you a record, or we give you a record. And like, we were in control of our everything, more so than any other band I've ever known of. You know, I've worked with a million bands, and nobody has the control that we did, you know. And yet there was this even talk at the time of like how we were this manufactured band. And it's like, you got to be kidding me, man. This is 100% us. We're not going around to different producers writing songs with us. We don't even have another engineer in the room. You know, it's like I'm engineering it too. You know, like we were 100% just us and in control. But I remember like our record came out. So then we got a little bit of backlash from some people like Pitchfork even. This is where I knew.
Oh my God, yeah, Pitchfork. Yeah.
Pitchfork was so ridiculous in that they went and pulled our original 9 out of 10 stars on Illegal Tender and wrote a new review. That happened a couple months after. It was ridiculous. And then it went down to like 7 or 6 or something like that. And it was like, and I knew that they were really corrupt, because I produced some stuff for Sky Ferreira, who was actually like at the time, she was hiring them to like be their PR and this and that. And that's why she was getting all this great fucking press from them. And I knew how corrupt they were, and I was like, but anyway, but like there was like great stuff like San Francisco. We go up and we're playing the Fillmore. We had a sold out show at the Fillmore, which was a dream of mine. I don't know if I'd ever played the Fillmore. I think I'd played the Fillmore, maybe, but we had never like sold out and never headlined the Fillmore. And we sold it out, and we headlined the Fillmore. And in the paper, in the Guardian or whatever the big paper is up there, that's also like where people find out what music to see and stuff like that. We were on the cover, and there was this like, it was like the title was something like 7 reasons or 10 reasons why you should like hate Louis XIV. And you read the article, and it's like the chick that was writing it was like, you know, that's where she called me misogynistic, and I had to look it up. It was so funny. Yeah. I mean, like I didn't even know what the word meant. Yeah. But she written in this article like how much she would really like the music and how she actually really likes the music, but it was like detrimental to society and all this stuff. And meanwhile, and this is the irony of it all, meanwhile, like Snoop Dogg is saying, let me put my dick in your mouth, and everybody's cool with it. And you know, it was actually quite racist in it. Like a white guy, like there's the only cuss word I even say on that album, I say the word tit, you know, but it was like, it was so ridiculous that, you know, like, and the funny thing is too, we even got so much like backlash, whereas we were playing in Alabama. It was actually it was going to be like a week or like a couple of days after Katrina hit. And I remember we were at the MTV Music Awards in Miami, and Katrina hit, and we were supposed to drive to like Alabama the next day to do this gig at some place that was like on like a school or like somehow city owned property that was like the theater, or it was at like I said, like at a school or something. And we got canceled because the city hall held a meeting because we were too like dangerous. And I thought it was brilliant because first off, we got paid anyway. And I didn't want to go to fucking Alabama. I didn't want to drive, you know,
in a hurricane,
20 hours or whatever. I didn't want to do the shows like at the end of a tour. It was a big money gig, but we got paid anyway. I was like, great, we're out. Here's the irony. Here is the fucking irony though. Snoop Dogg played instead of us. And it was like, and I like Snoop. I love Dr. Dre. I love those productions. But come on, look at those lyrics, and then look what
he was in a murder trial, for God's sake.
I know exactly, but it was cool. Like, and I thought this is so backwards. This is so messed up. Like the city's okay with the black guy saying the dick in my mouth and whatever, like dick in your mouth, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
And in Alabama.
But they weren't cool with us. It was really like.
It's sort of awesome. It's sort of awesome in its own way.
I thought it was great. I love the idea of being banned in fucking Birmingham, Alabama. I think that's what it was, Birmingham. It was amazing. Like literally, we're not allowed to play, and but we got a lot of that stuff, and I think but the irony of it is, like the amount of like 15 to like age like 15 to like 21-year-old girls that would just come to the shows and that were so ecstatic about it, like it was crazy, you know, like it was like, and I think a lot of it was, like girls finding their sexual identity and really embracing that music, because we were not afraid to be, and we were playful. We were just having fun, you know, like it wasn't like, there was nothing that was misogynistic, I don't think at all. It was like, I'm sorry, like girls do sometimes dig a man that is like knows what he wants and is a bit well,
that's the dichotomy. That's the problem in itself, is that not everybody fits one box, and everybody has wants and desires. Maybe they don't have those wants and desires every minute of the day, but but music is a pathway towards sex for the most part.
It can be. Although, funny enough, I can't listen to music and have sex. I can't, because I will actually listen to the fucking music, and I can't have music on and do anything really, because I will listen to the music. And
not even some Kenny G.
What's that?
Not even some Kenny G.
No, I can't. No, I'll listen to that even more so. Because when I hear music, if I like it, I jam along with it in my brain. Like I literally jam in my brain. I will jam, like I will play harmonies. I will groove out. I'll play counter things. I will jam with music, or I'll listen to it and I'll sort of like, in a way, study it. Right? I'm sort of like, like I'm dissecting it. The bass is doing this and that. So I'm like, anyway. But
it's just just people forget that it's a pathway towards the act, and there's just so much. But I think rock was just that in the 2000s was really getting attacked on all ends, and that's why it's basically been decimated as an art form now. I mean, completely. Not that there aren't rock bands, but they don't hold the same power they did.
Yeah, and I don't even know. Like, I can't even think of really so many of them that are any good. It's a lot of it's just become big. It's like Budweiser to me. It's just like. you know, I'm not going to bag any of the bands or whatever, but it's sort of like, it's just becomes, there's not a lot of creativity in it, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, Louis set out just to be like our own favorite band. That was true.
Yeah.
That was the goal. And we were. And there were like, you know, at that time when Best of the Secrets Are Kept especially came out and we would play at night, like I thought we were the, you know, whether we were or not, it doesn't matter. In my mind, we were the best band like in existence at that moment in time. And I would have put us up on any stage and said, we can fucking rock you, like rock better than anybody else. Because we were firing. It was a culmination of all the years and we were like firing on all cylinders and really finding our way. And we tapped into something, you know, that was really like exciting and fresh and unique, I think. To the point where David Bowie said we were his favorite band, you know, like,
that's cool.
And like, you know, which was like, oh, wow, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys come around 10,
what's that?
Oh no, that's insanely cool. But no, if you guys came out like 10 years before, you know, it could have been a whole different, you know, ball of wax. But I 10 years later or now, it's like there's no way you guys would be.
Oh, we'd be
run out the country with pitchforks.
No, we'd be destroyed with the way that like the sort of cancel culture and all this sort of stuff is now. Oh my God. I feel bad for bands, man, because like I feel bad. There's like bands like in LA and stuff like, because now there's this like push for, and this will probably get me in trouble to say this sort of shit too, but it is true. Like with social media and all this sort of stuff, like people want to have their 5 minutes of fame or whatever. Yeah. And so they'll like go out with like a dude and the guy will like be a dick or something, or just not be into him anymore or this or that. I'm not saying things don't happen that are terrible, you know, but like sometimes it's just like the guy was just kind of a jackass maybe, or the girl was a psychopath or crazy or whatever. And he was like, you know, and then she just destroys him online. You know, that happens. I've like seen it happen.
Well, it's a lot easier to destroy anybody nowadays.
It's like, so easy, right? You know, and
or anything.
And we were wild. I mean, in our heyday, like the party was always following us. Like it was like crazy, you know, like it was nuts. All the other bands from like would come around to like hang around with us on tour because that's where all the girls were and that's where all the fun was. And it was nuts. I think because of like those several songs, it gave a lot of like girls like leeway. They wanted to like get crazy and they saw us as that vehicle. And for a time we were like, okay, you know, but we were kind of like, the truth is like, I was most interested, and this is like the funniest thing about it was like, I wasn't interested always in like hooking up with girls and stuff. I just wanted to get away from the band because I was always, since I was like 12, I was in a band. And there was a time when I was 19 or 17 or 18 or something, when there was like a month where I was, no, 19, where there was a month when I moved up to San Francisco that I wasn't in a band. But other than that, up until that time, my whole life practically, since I was like 12, was in a band. So I was always in like the leader of a gang, and which is great. But at a certain point, you just want to get away from all the dudes and stuff. So much of me was like trying to find a girl that I could go back to her house with and just go and take a shower and use her like girly shampoos and shit. Like I would just like and cuddle with like a little dog or a cat, and like they'd have soft pillows and like watch a movie. Like I wasn't even interested in like sex, you know, and stuff. I just really wanted to like get away and hang out and have a little bit of normalcy when your life is crazy.
Some estrogen instead of testosterone.
What's that?
Some estrogen instead of testosterone.
No, exactly. And just to get away and like have a little like balance out the system and stuff. You know, that was what it was about to me. That's why it was sort of like funny that like I'm so misogynistic or whatever. Because it was also like I was also sort of playing a bit of a character.
Right.
It was really me. Like I am that guy, but like not always. You know, like
and it's also it's like I said, it was. You know, that was why the comparisons to like glam. It's like it was you, but more. You know, it's all supposed to be fun. It wasn't. There wasn't anybody like you wanted to stab somebody to death. You know, it's like
totally. No, exactly. There was like all sorts of really crazy dark stuff. You know, it reminds me of the funniest things. Like people would try to throw all sorts of shit at us. Like there was a guy that wrote for Pitchfork that ultimately got fired in Cannes that wrote a really stupid article about us, and I called him out on it. I was like, dude, you wrote like a third grader, is what I said to him. And it was really bad. And then like later on, a few months later, he goes and I think he realized that he was kind of an idiot. And so he goes and sees us at Irving Plaza. The funny thing about this is, so this is like, there's like so much so I have the flu. I have totally the flu. And it's Irving Plaza, like where the record company is. Atlantic's basically based in New York, the headquarters. Right. And so much of press is in New York. And we're at like sort of the tail end of a tour. And I get really sick like on tours a lot because you're singing, you're touching people, handshaking. You're accidentally on a microphone that's not yours and that some person was just breathing into. It's like petri dish of sickness. And I sit there and I have the flu and we're about to play the sold out show at Irving Plaza. And there's all this attention to us because we'd actually sort of like with everything, like when we first came out, it was like all praise and you get a little bit of backlash. And then we were about to coming back up where people are starting to realize, oh, actually these guys can play, It's not what we thought, and are like not what like, and press are like cheap too. Like we used to play a game. This is a little side note. Me and Brian would play a game sometimes where we like say some little bit of bullshit and see how far in the world it would spread, just to see like if people were doing their homework. And most of the time, like I'm a realist. Human beings, like they're supposed to write an article in Boston on a Friday night. They want to go out, so they're just going to look at some other article and then just regurgitate those facts and put it in, And so, like you'd be on the other side of the country and see some little token of bullshit that you spread, and you'd be like, "Oh, that's funny." But anyway, I was like, so we're playing Irving Plaza. I'm sick as can be. Like I really have the flu, and I call up my manager. I'm talking to my manager. It was this guy named Michael Jobson, Curly Jobson, great guy. But he was like a longtime tour manager for like Queens of the Stone Age and all sorts of bands. And he used to play in the 80s. He was a side guy in Echo and the Bunnymen.
Okay.
And anyway, he's a road warrior. He'd been on the road forever. So he knew every trick that can be. And he goes, hey, man, he's like, I tell you what, if you can get a little bit of crystal, you do a tiny little bit of crystal. I'm not a drug user. Like I'll smoke pot, but I'm not like, a big time dude like that. And I was pretty, straight on the road for the most part, other than drinking pot. And at the time, I wasn't really even smoking pot outside like a little joint at the end of the night or something, maybe. But anyway, so he goes, if you can find some, that's like, it was like a Queens of the Stone Age trick, was like to do a little bit of crystal and then you'll be able to play the show.
Right.
Like, shit. Well, at the time, we happened to have Kenny Rogers' old bass player from the 70s as our bus driver, and he was like a full-on crystal addict, or like
cool,
or crack, or what. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. There were some stories about that guy. Like,
very lucky.
Like, and so like I go up to him, and I'm like, man, do you got anything? And I probably shouldn't say any of this on a podcast, but it is true. It is true. So he gives me a little bit. I do a tiny little bit just to get me through the show. So I go out, I do a little bit, and I go out and I play a kick-ass show. Like we were on fire. But keep in mind, I have the flu. Like I have a bad flu. Like I'm throwing up 5 minutes before and probably right after too. Right. And we go out and play the show. And this guy that had written this article for Pitchfork was now writing an article for the Village Voice. And he then writes a really praising article about us, and really well written this time because he knew he'd written like such a little kid. But he tried to throw all these funny backhanded compliments at us, which was like, he said like, and this was the part that was just made me laugh so hard because this is not the type of player I am. I never play the same guitar solo ever twice. I've never sat there, like all of my guitar solos on all of my records and live are all made up off the cuff. There's usually the first or second take. I might do 2 takes and I'll pick one of them. I don't have the patience to learn a riff. Like I like it would have taken me 5 minutes to learn some of the rad riffs that I really like, but I just never would do that. I'm not like that kind of player. Like I like to create. I don't like to mimic. I've never like been one to learn other people's songs or learn other people's riffs. only riff I can ever really remember learning was one riff from Crossroads by the Eric Clapton version where he goes, and still to this day I'll play that one riff. That's about the only riff I can ever really remember copying. And anyway, this guy writes this article about how he says, I'm so studied and every guitar lick was so perfectly placed. And you could tell that I'd studied Jimi Hendrix Jimmy Page and so and so and so and so. And like everything was like slightly derivative of these guys. And I'm just like, this is so far from the truth. Like every guitar solo I played that night was so off the cuff. Half of the parts I'm playing are so off the cuff. It was just spontaneous and we killed it. And I thought, oh, this is really fun. But like that's how press were at the time, like trying to find something to hang on to when it's the reality is, man, no, everything was just made up off the spot, man, right there. But yeah, well, anyway.
A lot of that comes from the time, and you know, just like everything, because I started out around the same time, and we were, you know, the people I was coming up with, I recall being like, oh, well, we're like the new generation of, you know, music writers. They were all, you know, into Lester Bangs and stuff like that, but they thought they knew everything, but they also were extraordinarily cocky about everything.
Oh gosh, yes. And well, I had a big pet peeve that would happen like about a year or so or two before we really broke. Like the Franz Ferdinands and all those bands came out from England, that all of a sudden everybody in the press is talking about Gang of Four. I don't know if you remember that period.
Yeah.
And I'm a massive music fan. I know music. I didn't know who the fuck Gang of Four was. And I certainly know every one of you press motherfuckers didn't know who Gang of Four was either. But they would use it to like bag these bands that came out like, oh, they're just copping Gang of Four. It's like, right. It's just like the same thing about like everybody would like, because I was a huge T-Rex fan and I would talk about T-Rex all the time, but nobody was talking about T-Rex at the time.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan. So I would talk about, so suddenly we'd get T-Rex this, T-Rex that, all in everything that was about us too. And it was like, I remember actually, I was doing an interview in Toronto and I'm walking the streets of Toronto on my cell phone and I'm talking to a guy in Boston and I'm talking to him and every question's T-Rex. And I stop and I said, all right, man, I'm going to answer that question, but you got to give me three songs by T-Rex. Right. And he goes, oh, man, I'm into hip hop. It's like, I don't know anything about T-Rex. But when the article came out, T-Rex, it was all about, you know, and it was so like, come on, man. Like write about what, you know, like there was just like this sheepish thing. And it wasn't a bad article. It was a good article, but I just thought it was so funny.
No, that sounds familiar. I mean, I knew a lot of those guys at the time, and you know that's the thing. I always been about things a different way. I was always a fan, and I knew I didn't know everything.
Sure, exactly.
What I liked, and that's it. You know, it's like
you know, and that's totally fine. Like I remember, that the Gang of Four that was the big lesson of, oh, this is how press are, because I remember there's a guy in San Diego that was the big music mag guy that I grew up with, and reading an article where he was talking about Gang of Four this, Gang of Four that. And I'm like, you grew up in San Diego with me. You don't know who the fuck Gang of Four is. I know you, man. I'm not gonna call your name out on this podcast, but I know you didn't know who they were, just as I didn't know who they were. You know, we didn't. You know, like they weren't. Gang of Four didn't hit big in the United States. They didn't hit at all. You know, as a matter of fact, they only hit then. That was when they actually broke. America was in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, like
there are a lot of bands like that. The bands from the 2000s that broke through, and then you found out who influenced them, and that's fine. You know, I got to know who Gang of Four was, but honestly, up until those bands broke, I didn't know who the fuck they were either.
Yeah, exactly. Me neither. Yeah, fun. You know, the fun saga of it all.
But that's the fun thing I think about music, is that you can learn about stuff that you've never heard of before.
Totally.
But it's the know-it-alls that always pissed me off. Oh yeah, I have all their original albums. You know, that shit.
Sure. Oh, you know, and a lot of press guys too are like want to be musician guys too, that are kind of a little bit bitter that they never made it. You know, like too, which I kind of get. And so they're you know, and then you listen to their bands and it's just like junk. It's like, well, that's why you never made it, man, because your music's terrible.
You have to put in so much effort to even be passably good. And then it's a matter of so many other things to cut through. You got to live it. It's unquantifiable. You know, it's like, it's
100%. You got to live it. Like I tell this to people all the time. Like I have interns that are at the studio here. They come around, like I own this place, Department of Recording and Power, and I have interns around and stuff. But I'll always tell them, like, you know, like, don't do music for any other reason, but you have to. Like I had to. It was truthfully my therapy as a kid. You know, I can definitely draw a line between my parents getting a divorce and me just diving into music, and then suddenly needing to write a song. And it wasn't like my things were about divorce or anything like that, but I see what happened. Like suddenly there was darkness in my life and sadness, and I needed to figure out how to get it out. And I wasn't going to go to a fucking psychologist or whatever as a kid, or, you know, maybe I could have or whatever, but it
wasn't something you thought about. Yeah.
I turned a little bit to drugs and a little bit and a lot to guitar. And it was my salvation. And it was just, from then on, it was the only way I knew how to deal with life. It was the only thing I wanted to do. Yeah. I never had a backup plan. I never had, I'll try this out for 3 years or 5 years. It was like, if I'm going to be broke my whole life, I'm going to be broke, but I'm going to do what I love to do. You know, I had to. I don't know. I never had another idea about it. And that's what I try to tell people is like, don't get into it. It's too hard. Like, it's like the odds of you being successful at music are so small unless you just put all of your life into it.
Yeah.
And you have to, in order to be successful. So you have to like live it. You have to like, it has to be everything that is in you. Like in your time, like, you know, people ask me all the time, like, hey, what do you do in your time off? Like, or like in between, like doing film scores or something. I make music. That's what I do. I make music. I don't know what else to do. It's my fun, you know. It's like my fun. It's my passion. It's just what I do, you know. I build shit, you know. I make inventions. I invent my own instruments. I like to build rooms and I like to find things and sit around and chat with friends. But other than that, I'm just making music. And usually when I'm sitting around chatting with my friends, we invariably get in and start making music. You know, it's like, you know, like that's just what we do. And you have to live it. You have to have it in you. And you can't have an escape plan.
Right.
You can't. If you want to be successful, you just can't. You can't be like, I'm going to be a dentist otherwise, or, you know, I mean, everybody's got to make money, you know, work at a bar or do this or that to survive. But every other given waking moment, you got to want to be in there making music.
Yeah.
Even when, like, since you're like a little kid, you got to like have that in you. Otherwise, I'd say just don't do it. You know, find something else that you love to do and figure out a way to get somebody to pay you how to do it. You know, like that's the key to life, I think, is finding something you love to do and finding something that, you know, will pay you to do it. But I'm lucky in that regard, you know.
Yeah.
I've found that for me, but it's tough. Like you gotta live it. You gotta live it. Like you have to just have it in you to do no matter what. And it's exhausting. You know, being a musician can be fucking exhausting. Like there's so many times, like it'll be like 2 a.m. and I'll think of an idea. It happened the other day. Yeah. I wrote, or it was like midnight or something, and I'm sitting in bed, I'm watching something on TV, and I just had that feeling. Yeah. And I remember I had something in my mind, had the phrase worthy of you're not worthy of my love came into my brain. And I was like, fuck. All right, I'll get up and go write that song. And so I go out, I just go sit on the piano, and an hour later I've, you know, written this song. I didn't want to do it. I had to, because it was like in me. I knew, I know when a song's coming. I know, like you get this feeling, like you just have this feeling of like, okay, you could write something right now, you know. But when you're a kid and stuff, like that used to happen all the time. At 3 a.m, you asleep and you wake up and you'd have an idea and you'd stay up until the sun came up and you'd do the songs. That's how those songs, the big sort of like Pledge of Allegiance, Paper Doll, and Find Out True Love Is Blind. At the end of the night, in the middle of the night, those songs came out and it was like, boom, and I retract them, and what you hear was happened and tracked that night at like 3 a.m, you know.
Right.
You know, and it's exhausting. Sometimes that's the last thing you want to do. You just want to sit around, you know, like playing gigs. The last thing sometimes you want to do is get on stage and play. You want to sit in a hotel room and watch fucking Lost or whatever stupid show you're watching. Like you don't want to stop watching it and go play a gig. You know, like you're like, no, I want to like get room service and just hang around and not
chill out.
Yeah, but you know, look, it's like one of those things. Like it's hard work. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. I loved it. I've been so blessed to live such a wonderful life and have so many crazy, wonderful experiences. And at the end of your life, it's just about the stories, you know, that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
when was the last time you toured?
2012. I think, yeah. I played a few shows for Vicki Cryer, and then we did like a month and a half or so in Europe and with the Killers, and then Mexico. As a matter of fact, I just posted on my Instagram at Jason Hill Official. The bass player on this tour, on the Mexico tour legs, my friend Chris Sester played drums from Jet because our drummer bailed out right before we were about to play 46,000 people in Mexico City. We had a kind of a really crazy tour that was a nightmare in a way, and it culminated in like Amsterdam. I again had the flu in Amsterdam and playing. It was because it was like the winter and stuff, and then we all got in a bunch of fights, and so like our drummer and our bass player basically quit for like, this was like the 4th time they'd quit. They were always quitting, you know. This is what happens when you're in a band, you know. People like. You know, like but I've always had to deal with that. I was always the little Hitler, little Nazi kid that was like at 14, like, what do you mean you got fucking soccer practice? Fuck that. You're in my band now. We're going to practice every day after school. What do you mean? You know, like, so I was always dealing with that stuff, having to like drag everybody to do shit. And, but anyway, so Chris Sester played from Jet, who's one of my best friends, and John Pancos on bass, but he sent me over like the first show in Guadalajara, and I posted like the entrance, the first song, Paper Doll, on my thing, and it was like, wow. And I think we did that without a single rehearsal with those guys, and that playing to 26,000 people. But that was the last time I toured. We were going to do a tour in March, but then COVID happened. We were going to do the 15-year anniversary to Best of the Secrets Are Kept. And then COVID happened, and so those. Yeah,
because you and Brian had gotten back together to do a song.
Yeah, and we've worked on a few. There's actually a couple that haven't been released. One called Saki. But yeah, we've done a number of things, and then COVID happened and sort of like derailed it. But and that would have been fun. But now I'm kind of keen to get back out again. I am. I'm sort of like. You know, I'll tell you a little story about that last tour we did. It was really kind of funny in hindsight because Mark, our drummers, Mark Magard, his now wife, Erin, I don't think she was his wife at the time. I think they were just going out. But so we're playing in Europe, and we're playing all these big Enormo domes, you know, the arenas in Europe and stuff. And she flies out to somewhere in one of these dates. Like she was gonna like spend the last like week and a half with us on tour. Wow. And in the old days, we didn't allow girlfriends really to tour with us. They would come for a couple days, but it was always so much stress on everybody else in the band. It for just that reason, because first off, every guy when their girlfriend would come around or something, or wife or whatever, they would get stressed because it's not all the way people make it seem on a tour bus and stuff. Like we're lucky enough to be a tour bus at this point, but like it's not all like glamorous. It's work, you know. It's exhausting and it's traveling and it's you're around people at all times. There's no privacy and it can be exhausting and people get, you know, bent out of shape because the night before they were drinking or whatever, just to like get through the show. They had to like take a couple of drinks and whatever. And all this sort of stuff. But anyway, so she flies out to wherever we were. And it just so happened that Brandon Flowers, the singer of the Killers that we were touring with, he got a sore throat. So like a kind of bad one. And so he bails out. Like he says, I can't do the show. It was like Budapest or somewhere. And so we don't go to Budapest. And so she flies into Budapest, wherever it was. And then we go to the next place, right? So she gets on a train after like a flight from California to Budapest, gets on a big train, goes to whatever city we're about to go to. Like it takes her like a day to get there. Right when she gets there, Brandon's throat's still messed up. We're not going to do that show again too. And we're stressed out as a band too, because like every show you don't play, that's a big chunk of change that you're not making the money for. Yeah. And before you know it, if you bail out of 3 shows, you've just played a month of shows and you're making no money. You know, like, so like we're now like, oh man. So everybody's starting to get stressed, and we're at the end of a tour. It's winter in Europe. It's cold. You know, we're not all getting along so much. It's like, you know, like it's just how it ends. It ends up being, you know, in any relationship, it's hard to like deal with the shit. And we've known each other since we were kids, you know, like I've been playing with Mark, the drummer, since he was 15 or 16, you know? Yeah. And so like, you know, like all this stuff sort of builds up and you want to get away from each other. Anyway, so like Aaron takes the train, like flies into Budapest, whatever, goes to the next place. We don't show up there. So now she gets on another train and finally sees us. Like we get to like Amsterdam, but by this point it's like it's taken her 5 days in Europe of traveling to get to the last 2 shows. One's Amsterdam, and then she's going to get into Paris. So she's going to see these last 2 shows. I get food poisoning. I didn't have the flu. I got food poisoning from like the fish backstage. And me and all the guys, whatever, Amsterdam shows always kind of sucked because the other guys would all do a bunch of like shrooms and stuff. They'd get into town and go to town. I never was. I'm not that. That's just not me. But like, and I got to sing. So I, you know, like the singer has it the hardest. I realized that when I toured with the New York Dolls playing bass, it was like, man, I could just be wasted all day long and I could still play. I can hide behind my instrument and I'll kick ass. But singing, you got to communicate. You got to like actually be present. You know, like you can't. You just it's like nerve wracking all day long. You don't go travel and walk around the city because you'll be exhausted by the time night falls, and you can't do that. So like it can be a lot more boring. With the New York Dolls, I would go around and see the sights. It was like the first time in all the years I would tour, I'd finally get to see the sights. But poor Aaron. So Aaron gets to this like we get to Amsterdam. All the other guys. Me and Jimmy, the bass player, literally got in just about a physical fist fight. I'm sober as can be. He's wasted on shrooms. He comes to my room. Like, he had some beef with whatever. I forgot what it was all about. But I'm like, fuck you. He's like, fuck you. And we basically almost come to blows. And so the next day we're playing Amsterdam, and I have food poisoning too. There's just tremendous like tension backstage, and Aaron shows up amidst like this massive tension, and I, you know, like it was just like it was kind of crazy, you know, like there's just all, and also I'm hanging out with this one girl that's like a girl I'd known for years, like in town, that's like from Amsterdam or whatever, and so like Aaron's probably looking at that going like, what does Mark do when I'm not around? And the truth is, Mark never once ever fooled around on anybody. I never even remember him ever getting together with any girls, to be honest with you, in all of the years. So like the idea that any girl would be like worried about Mark was crazy. Mark, all he cared about was playing drums, Sports Center, and drinking beer. And he was cool. That's all still today, that's all he cares about. I love Mark. Simple man, great guy. But anyway, so like, but poor girl. So we go up. I remember I threw up right before I got on stage. I have 2 buckets on both sides in case I throw up on stage. I think I may have even. There's video of it though, and we played a great show. The adrenaline kicks in. We kind of kick ass. But there's all this tension, and so she gets on the tour bus. Then that night we drive, or like the next morning or something. And Mark didn't bother to get his own room. We always bunk with people. And Mark didn't bother to get his own room like an idiot. So she's like sleeping in like the floor or the bed with like Mark and Jimmy and like, and Parker, our roadie, who was so wasted that he was going to go, I think, bunk in my bed, my room, because we'd always share. but he couldn't find it. And I think that's the reason why Jamie and I got in a fight, because Parker was so wasted he passed out on the floor. But like, so anyway, that was tension. We get on the train or on the tour bus to go to France to play in Paris. And we're driving, we're like 3 or 4 hours outside of Paris, and the freeway stops. There's so much snow that they are not letting anybody in and out of Paris because the freeway is so fucked. And so for 24 hours, we're sitting stopped on this freeway, like going into Paris. The Paris show's canceled. There's so much tension on our bus. I end up going and spending most of the time with Brandon and Ronnie from the Killers, and we wrote a song. Me and Brandon wrote a couple songs or something on their bus. But like, the poor girl, like, she comes to see this great stuff. She sees one show where there's all this tension, misses Paris. So eventually, after 24 hours on this freeway, we still got to fly out like the next day out of Paris to go back home and to get to the Mexico shows like a few days later. So we go to this tiny little town where there's only one hotel room, and it's like the dingiest hotel room ever. We all stay in this one room. There's only one room available. And we get in there at like 3 a.m, and we have to leave at like 5 a.m. And we all have our bags from a 1.5-month, 2-month-long tour and guitars and this and that. And we have to walk in the snow. No, it's a tiny town, so we couldn't call taxis or anything like that. We tried. Nobody would answer. There's nothing. So we had to walk several miles through like powdery snow with all of our bags, like, to get to the train station, to take a train into Paris and then to the airport and then fly off. And poor girl, she's got to deal with this. Like, this is kind of like normal shit that happens on tour. It's not all glamorous. It's like that kind of stuff happens where you're hauling like your bags, and like a guitar through snow, through like you're slipping, you're sliding, it's freezing. It's miserable, and you're exhausted, you're tired, you're just like, and then you're
sick of each other.
Yeah, and you gotta fly like, another, I don't even know what, 15 hours or so, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but like, it's nuts. But the funny thing is, then Mark basically bailed out of the next shows to Mexico. And I'm 100% certain it's because Aaron was like, fuck this. This is ridiculous, Yeah. But yeah, funny. I mean, funny, like a million of those sorts of things that would happen,
Yeah, it's not always fun to live the glamorous life of a rock guy.
Totally. But that, I'm pretty sure that was our last tour, other than we played Mexico, which was fantastic, to like great crowds. And that was a blast. And that was kind of like a little vacation, really. And I was playing with my friend Chris and John Pankos and stuff, and it was like kind of like playing with a new band in a way. Like I don't know if we were as good, but it was fun. Like it was great. Like it was, And that was nutty though. That was nutty because she was like, it was so dangerous. You'd be followed by fans, and it was kind of crazy down there. You always had bodyguards, and but fun times. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of quick questions, and we've been talking for a while, so I appreciate it. One is, you did play and record with the Dolls, the New York Dolls. You produced one of their last albums.
Yeah, their last album. Yeah.
With Sylvain just passing, what are your remembrances? Your memory.
Oh man, I actually wrote. I wrote a piece for Riff Magazine right after he passed, where they contacted me and asked me if I wanted to write a piece, or if I would write a piece sort of about Sylvain. And I did, and it was really great to remember, and to think about him. He was a gem, man. He was great. He'd always try to talk French to me, which was always really cute, because I spent a lot of time in France, a lot of time. And we did really well over there, but I'm terrible with languages, so I'm awful with them. I barely speak English, and I took years and years of like Spanish in high school, and I still can't really speak it at all. But he was great. like basically, like he's for one, he's the one that would take care of me because I took advantage of the fact that I wasn't singing, and I was like this young buck, you know, like playing with these guys that have been around the block and have been doing it forever. And two days before we were about to play, I think the first show was in New York City, and then we went and did 6 shows in England, and then we stayed in Newcastle for a month and wrote and recorded the whole record, which I produced and played on. But 2 days before that, Sammy Yaffa, who's a really great bass player, and a friend of mine, I know him. I mixed something for his band a while back, like around 2006 or something. I mixed something. He was the original bass player in Hanoi Rocks. And so Michael Monroe, who was the singer of Hanoi Rocks, you know, and they had a devastating thing with like Razzle dying and this and that. They never got really their due. They were about to hit huge in the early 80s. And then Razzle dying from, you know, Vince Neil's car accident derailed them. Anyway, so like Sammy bailed out to play with Michael Monroe. And so David Johansen calls me up and goes, "You can play bass, right?" And I'd never played bass live in my life. But on records, on a lot of the Louis records, I would play the bass, or Brian would. We trade off of who was doing what. But I played on a lot, and you know, and I can play pretty much everything. So I was like, "Yeah, man, I'll definitely play bass. That sounds fun."
Yeah.
And so, you know, but I sort of took advantage of that. I realized, oh my God, this is so easy. I can just sort of play my instrument, and I can drink and have fun and let loose. And Sylvain, many glorious evenings, especially on that first leg of the tour, I would wake up, you know, in the morning going, how did I get back to my hotel room? And it was Sylvain. He was a sweetheart, you know. And he realized, I think, at first, Sylvain was a little bit standoffish because he'd had bad experiences with producers in the past. And guys that didn't appreciate him, you know, as much. So he kind of had a chip on his shoulder at first. And then he played me all of these demos that he'd done in his basement in Atlanta on this little like 4-track or 8-track that he had. And it'd be like him with a farfisa and like maybe a little melody line. It was always these very bare bones little ideas. And I loved them. And I thought that's how we should make a record.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, I think like people made records, like the last 2 records with them, I thought didn't do them justice. There's comeback records. One Jack Douglas did, who I love his stuff too. He did Double Fantasy, and he's a great producer. And Todd Rundgren, who I'm a massive fan of Todd Rundgren. Yeah. But I don't think they made great records with them. They didn't do it justice. Like they kind of approached it like a lot of people make records, which bores the fuck out of me, which is like, okay, let's track the drums, and let's track the bass, and let's track the guitars, then let's do the vocals. And God, you know, like I can't make a record like that. If I know what it's supposed to sound like, I don't want to make that record because I've already heard it now. Like, you know, like I got to like experiment and find the thing and discover it. I love to walk in a room, not know what the fucking thing's going to be, have a little, maybe a German idea. And then at the end of the day or end of a couple of days, like, here's your song. And it's a discovery and it's an evolution and it's exciting. And so like with Sylvain, so that's the kind of record I wanted to make with him. I didn't want to like and I thought those other records, they kind of just went through the motions and didn't really produce them. You know, David even said to me once when we were in the studio, like, he's like, he'd never been produced. Like as people just kind of just said, oh, let's just track it. You know, like they would just go like 1 or 2 takes or whatever. And I just wanted to make the record that these guys I thought should have made, which was like, and I didn't really want to make a rock record too. So I kind of fought a little bit of like the natural instincts, like Sylvain and me fought over bringing Marshalls, and I wouldn't let him bring a Marshall into the studio, you know, which is like every record he's ever made, I'm sure he played a Marshall. So I was like, no, we're going to bring in Silvertones and Twins and this and that and Ampegs and blah, blah, blah. You know, I just try to I hunted down all this weird old gear and all these great amps, and I brought over some stuff. And but I think when he realized that I was on his side, then he warmed up to me. And I describe him in the piece as like he became like bubbles in champagne to me, which he was, because he was such like a little kid. Like he was so fun. Like he'd start drinking like Chardonnay or something, or rosé, or something whitish, like white wine-ish, usually at the end of 5 or 6 rolls around, and we'd all be rolling joints and smoking joints and drinking a little bit in the studio and stuff, and he would just get giddy and bubbly, and he was like a little kid. And I think he was really happy that most of the ideas that started in the songs were started from his little basement germ ideas, and we try to flesh those out and make a song out of them. And it all happened in a month, and it was a great experience. We all lived in the same house, and he was just a really great guy, and he was a lot of fun. And sometimes he would get a little bitter, especially on the road, and him and David might get in fights, or there'd be a little bit of weird animosity about shit that happened 30 years ago, like whatever stuff I didn't know about, but he would take it personally, and whatever it is, they were like brothers, where they were they were the best when we were making the record, and then we toured. Then sometimes they'd have some clashes, and Syl would be in a bad mood for a day or two, but then he would turn back into the bubbles, and he'd take care of me, and he was just great, I'm like I say in the article too, I'm sure Syl talked a lot of shit about me at times, that was just kind of his thing, but I know he loved me too, just the same, because I would fight with him, I would everything, I can be a pain in the ass in terms of if I think something's best, I'll try to make that happen, but I think we made a really great record, and it's a lot of fun to make, and it's really sad, but I'm glad that they're just nominated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think kind of makes me nominated. I don't know for a fact.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works.
I think every member of the band somehow kind of is. So I that's sort of what I've been joking around to some of my friends with, hey, I'm going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It feels like I robbed a bank to maybe get there, or came in the back door, but in some sort of way I am, whether it's official or not, but it's great. And it's an honor. It was an honor to play. The reason why I jumped at the chance to do it is because when I was 14, I had a New York Dolls shirt. Before I even, I think, heard their music, I had a shirt because I loved the lipstick New York Dolls slogan, whatever, and then got really into the first couple of records, and then and so when they asked me when they called and David called and said, "Hey, do you want to do the record?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I'd love to," because I also thought it was my duty to honor them. And David's such a great guy, and he was such a great talent, super creative. So was Sylvain. It was they were just great. And Sylvain wasn't the best guitar player, but he had his panache. He had his style. Yeah. And he had nobody could doll up an A chord like he could milk it, for the audience, and he loved being Sylvain Sylvain. He loved that thing that he made. He loved being a New York Doll, Yeah. He was a great guy, really great guy. It was really a shame that he died so young, and he didn't get to be a nominee in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because I think he would have loved that, Yeah. I think he would have loved that. I think it's probably really bittersweet for David, who I've talked a little bit lately about. I sent him a message when Syl died, and sent him a message and sent him the article I'd written, and sent him congratulations about the nomination. But yeah, man, fine artists, they don't always get the recognition in the day, but they did. They were icons, and Syl was great. He was really nothing but sweet to me. I loved him.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just got one quick one. It probably would have been better to wrap on that, but I did want to ask you about, you're working on music for an album, right?
Yeah. I'm almost done with it. I've written all the songs. What's that?
What is the status of it?
Well, I it's just a matter of finishing it, because I'm also juggling this Showtime show that I'm doing called Couples Therapy, it's a series, while doing this Fincher thing that I'm doing and making the record. But luckily, I said no to a lot of stuff over the winter because I was engaged and with a girl for almost 6 years, madly in love with her, and joined at the hip for 6 years, and we blew up during COVID, and she left.
Yeah,
and,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a bummer, but the truth is, I got amazing record out of it. So I kind of just channeled it all into this record, and found myself writing like so inspired because it was my therapy. I had to get it all out. So I kind of wrote this really fucking awesome heartbreak record, or like heartbreak ahead kind of vibe, or like heartbreak behind, I suppose. It was like, not all slow, but like I wanted it to be 100% honest and true. Like there's not a single lyric that isn't truthful. There's not a single anything that isn't 100% truthful and real. And I just let myself go there and be completely vulnerable and real and see what happens. And the stuff has just been pouring out of me to the point where I wrote the last one, Worthy of My Love, where I was like, I don't even want to put this on the record because I want to stop writing songs about this girl because emotionally I've kind of passed it, and I had to sort of go through it and write this record to actually get past her and get past it. I really did. And I knew that. And I know until I actually put it out, I'm not 100%. But at least once I finish it, and it's very close to being done, I really just have to spend a few more days and do a number of little things that I want to do to it. Certain parts, because what the problem is I was so electric writing this stuff, so hot writing this stuff that like I would write one, hurry up and track it, and before I could finish fully tracking it, I'd write a new one, and then I'd be on to that one. And so I would leave things 90% finished. And so I have to go through and make sure I finish those 10% stuff, like sometimes busy work, sometimes like, oh, I still want to sing a harmony on this thing, or I want to do this or that, and put it all together. So I probably will be done in about a month, I bet. It's sort of like one of those things, like once the initial couple of days that I'll work on something, and after a few days, it's hard to go back to it because you're catching moments in time, you're catching your mentality in time. And so I move on to the next idea. That's why like touring and stuff got sort of boring for me because I always like to write something and I always want the new song and I want to spend time in the studio and this and that and create this thing. But
right.
So, but the record, I'm really proud of it. It's really great. It's unlike really any record I've done before. And I think people will like it. And I love how truthful it is. It's so freaking honest. I just love it. And my friends love it. My friends are all flipping on it, like I'll enlist some of them like Chris Sester to play on stuff, or like one or two of the songs we wrote together. I wrote a couple songs, or at least one with my friend Ari, like that'll just sort of be around and we'll write something, or like I'll be like, you get on drums or this or that. And but it's a really great record. I'm really happy with it. I don't know how I'll release it. I made it for myself. It was that 14-year-old kid trying to get through like his parents' divorce, trying to write songs, and like the same thing, like me just trying to figure out how to get through this like COVID thing, and like being single and dating during a pandemic and meeting new girls and still hung up on the ex and trying to get through it and and all that sort of stuff. It was just me getting through life, slightly at times having a nervous breakdown, just trying to get through it and being honest about it and making sure, like even some of my friends, like, that they would like might suggest like different lyrics and stuff. And I'm just like, I can't change it, man, because it's not real.
Yeah.
I have to be truthful. I wanted every single word to be truthful to the most degree on it, I just wanted it to be real. And for whatever, some people might go, oh, like there's some upbeat ones on it, but there's also a bunch of heartbreak songs that are really great. And some people go, oh man, I don't want to hear that, but like whatever, it is what it is, and it's a fucking great record. And the next record I'll make will be totally different, but there's some gems on it. And there's a lot of like I went back to like some of my favorite ones. There's one called Hurt Machine that literally wrote in 20 minutes. And I just did the drums, played a drum beat, played a bass or a guitar, and then another guitar. I just pressed record, didn't know what I was going to play, and just did one take, and then pressed record on the vocal, and I ad-libbed the whole vocal, went to go swimming, came back with the intent of I would clean it all up, but it was like, that's the song. I'm not going to change a damn fucking thing, because it was like the old days of Best Little Secrets Are Kept, of like Paper Doll and Pledge of Allegiance and Find Out Truth Is Blind, where so much of that was just off the cuff and just finding that moment. And it's a lot of people's favorite song, that one, you know. And there's another one called Mr. Saturday Night. Same thing, that 90% of it was just ad-libbed. Me on the piano singing, my friend Ari on drums, and we just were doing something else, and it was at the end of the night, and I just started playing into it, and he followed me, and that was the song. And then we built on top of it, but it was like just truthful and peripheral. Like it was like whatever was on my mind, I wasn't focused. Like it just kind of came out of me because I didn't know what I was going to sing from one moment to the next. Right. You know, like I would land like a rhyme or something and be like, it's pretty good. Like there's a line in Hurt Machine that I freaking love called, you ain't the Liberty Bell, babe, you just the crack. And I loved it so much. Like I remember when I said it, like smiling ear to ear, and you can even hear myself smiling, even though it was kind of a pissed off song, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like, but you ain't the Liberty Bell, baby, just the crack. I loved it. It was like, I love those moments when I make up something and I turn myself on. Those are the moments I live for in music, when you're giddy with like excitement and trying not to fuck up the next things because you're making stuff up like that. You know, it's like, and I can't always do that, you know, like it comes only every once in a while when you can ad lib and actually land real lines, you know, like real keepers, you know, like sometimes you'll ad lib like a vibe or like a melody, and then you might take a little part of that and then change the words a little bit to make sense or to do this or that. But so much of this particular record was just let it come out and ad-libbed and allow it to be raw and peripheral. Because I believe you, like my best stuff is when I write it, when I'm looking at it like this. Because the moment I look right at it, I lose it. Like you try to make sense of it. You try to organize it and construct it. And sometimes that's the best thing to do, like being a craftsman and really crafting your songs. There's one called You're Perfect that Chris Assessor and I wrote that we did sort of craft, wrote it in about 2 days, and then really crafted it, and it's a timeless, beautiful song. But then there's other ones you just want to not look at directly because you'll lose what was appealing and interesting about them. You know, you'll choke it. And that brings me back to the original Louis stuff, which was like, it was about not choking stuff. It was about just whatever was there right at that moment and not overthinking it. Yeah. And I've tried to do that with this record, and I think it's possibly my best work ever, but we'll see, you know.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I have a similar thing. I've been trying to finish a screenplay that about a tumultuous time in my life, and honestly, I've actually got a soundtrack for it, which would probably be somebody like you who wouldn't want to hear that if it became a film. Sure. But one of the central songs in the soundtrack is Hope Sick.
Oh, cool. I love that.
Song is just so... I've listened to that song I don't know how many times since my divorce and this other relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
In the past 5 years, that it just everything about it rings absolutely right. You know,
it was a true. Well, the funny thing about that was actually written at the tail end of Convoy. That song was actually like, you know, that song we released in like 2008, but it was actually written in like 2002. Same with Air Traffic Control those were two like ones that we'd had at the very end of Convoy. And I was madly in love with this girl that I met that would later become my girlfriend. I think she had a boyfriend at the time that I wrote it. So I couldn't be with her. And I wrote this song. Like I wrote this feeling of like hopelessness in a way, you know, hope sick. And it was a very real to how I felt at that moment. And then Brian came in and helped me with a little section. I think probably the section that he sings on. But like but I remember it was written about this girl named Kim, and you know, which for me it's sort of like so much of my best work is when I'm heartbroken, you know, like it really is. You know, like when I was a kid, I think I would often break my own heart just to have something to write about, you know, like for like the last 5-6 years, I hadn't really I'd written music and I was like killing it in the film composing world, but I hadn't been writing a lot of songs with lyrics. And instantly my ex Keely leaves and my heart's busted and it just pours out. I finally had something to talk about. To her dismay in a way, because it was sort of like, why didn't you write me any of these gorgeous songs while we were together? It was like, because I was happy. It's hard to write when you're happy. You know, it's like, it's like people only write in their journals. It's like, it's really funny. It's like, I remember I had this girlfriend a long time ago that like, she would only, and I'm pretty sure Keely was the same way, like pretty sure all the girls were the same way. It's like, they would only write in their journal when they were like, when things were wrong. And if you read their journal, it was like, we had the worst relationship ever. But it was like only because that's when they would write in their journal. They're not like, I had the best day today. Jason's so great. It was, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, because you're not thinking, when things are going good, you're thinking less about everything.
Totally. And the last thing you have to do is like put your feelings down on paper. So like, you know, like, but that's the thing. It's like, so for songwriting, it's like, I have to have something that sparks me, that I really feel it to write about it, you know, otherwise you're just making shit up, and which can be fine, you know, like you have to have a purpose for it. The first original Louis record was written, I had an idea about a film, and it was kind of written about this kid that begins to think he's Louis XIV. And that was the thing before Best Little Secrets Are Kept. And so that was the initial stuff of that, like The Grand Apartment and Louis XIV, the song was written from a standpoint of like a character in a way. That would then it sort of just morphed into what Louis XIV became. But initially it was written with like a story in mind.
Right.
But for the most part, unless I do that, which that doesn't often happen, that happened then or whatever, but like most of the time I'm not. I have to write from a truthful place. And that's the only way I can actually say something that's real, you know, like I will piss off my friends that I'm writing with sometimes just because I'm just like, it's got to be real. I got to feel it. I got to mean it. I got to, it's got to be, it's like, why can't you just say, why, if it sounds good? It's like, well, you know, I don't want to. I want it to be real, you know, like I want it to be truthful. So, yeah. Well, good on the screenplay. That's, I mean, it's, you know, I'm always writing a couple of screenplays and things like that with friends. And it's, you know, that's tough. It's tough work being a writer. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to keep up to it. I've written about everything. I wrote about the food scene in Chicago for a while. I've written, you know, about music, about movies. I mean, I've just kind of just always been writing. It's just, you know, now it's something else. And I started doing I used to have the websites before that I was with other publications on the net and stuff. And then this whole thing happened and I was bummed out and I was like, I need an outlet. And I was like, well, everybody's doing these Zoom interviews now. I'm like, sure, hey, go back to doing what I did before. But, well, I don't want to keep you any longer. I really appreciate your time. And I just want to,
my pleasure.
I just want to let you know that from the bottom of my heart, your success has meant a lot to me because I was such an insane fan of Louis.
I love that.
I keep following, you know, like, you know, seeing what you guys are up to, you know, through the years. And it made my heart swell with pride when I saw you associated with Mindhunter.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's really sweet of you to say. I really appreciate that. You know, it's like as an artist and musician, it's ups and downs of stuff. And I'm just lucky that I can do this, you know, like, you know, I can walk in and make music and that's my life. You know, like a friend of mine, Ari, we were talking the other day and we were going for a walk with my dogs and stuff along the LA River. And he said something to me. He goes, I forgot how it came up, but he was like, oh, I don't really think of you as somebody that has a job. Like, you know, like, and it was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, even though, and sometimes there was like last year I juggled 4 shows at once and it was like mind numbing how to do it. It was like, like, how am I to do this? Like it was like, I was you know, it's one of the reasons why me and my ex probably broke up, because I'm just always working, but it's not. Yeah. I'm blessed to be able to do it, you know. So, yeah. But I really appreciate that's really sweet of you to say.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that you know because you know these things. It's a hard life, man. It's a hard life to just keep going, and I'm sure a lot of people have fallen by the wayside over the years and
totally
gave up. And you're still out there, and it's finally kind of happening for you. And I just because of the fact that you made a significant portion of my life very happy, I wanted to make sure that you knew that.
I appreciate that. Well, that's great. Well, this has been my pleasure. And anytime you want to chat, man, let's do it.
Yeah. When you actually end up putting out the album or something else comes up, and I am praying for another season of Mindhunter at some point, but I know that's a hard one to pray for.
Well, you know, never say never. I don't know. You know, like I knew it wasn't going to be coming back around a long time ago. You know, Fincher told me that he probably wasn't going to do it at least right away, but he's never said like forever. So you never know.
Right.
And
I know.
I wouldn't be surprised if in like a few years, because I know he has an idea. He had like 6 seasons mapped out.
Yeah.
Or at least 5. Like I remember reading the Bible stuff about it, and so you never know. I know he has an idea for it, so I could see it happening.
I hope it does, but you know, I also understand the way things go, and you know, I think
it just depends if he wants to do it or if he can find a showrunner to do it. You know, it's all really up to him, and but he works so hard on everything that he's got to want to do that for like a year or two. You know, for essentially like several years he lived in Pittsburgh. You know, like making this show. You know, so. You know, I don't know if he wants to do that again, or he'll probably spend it somewhere else. But
right. You know, and he was working on Mank and everything, and
he wanted to do Mank. He wanted to do other things, and I know he's got other things kicking around. I hope I can do more stuff with him in the future.
Well, I definitely love that show very much, and I loved the fact that you were a part of it. I'm like, when I saw that your name come up, I'm like, I know that fucking guy.
Yeah.